Hello and welcome to an online presentation of the Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review of the Burnsville Center Village area. This presentation will provide background on why the city is completing an AUAR, what was studied in the AUAR, the schedule for completing the review, and ways that you can comment on the draft AUAR mitigation plan. So what is an Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review, or otherwise known as an AUAR? The AUAR process is a hybrid of the Environmental Assessment Worksheet and Environmental Impact Statement review processes. The AUAR document lists questions adapted from the EAW form, but provides a level of analysis of typical urban area impacts comparable to an EIS. The purpose of an AUAR is to analyze cumulative impacts of anticipated development scenarios within a given geographic area, and it also informs local planning and zoning decisions based on the environmental analysis. The City of Burnsville is completing an AUAR for the Burnsville Center Village area because the state of Minnesota requires environmental reviews on proposed developments of a certain size and scale which this project meets. The city is also using the AUAR as a planning tool to understand how the development scenario will affect the environment of the community before any development occurs. The AUAR study area encompasses 77 existing parcels on an area totaling approximately 427 acres. The City of Burnsville is evaluating the potential impact of the maximum development based on the land uses and densities depicted in the 2040 Comp Plan and the Center Village Redevelopment Vision. Any development or redevelopment will be ongoing over the next several years, depending on market conditions. The AUAR development scenario shown in the table is based on the maximum development allowed under the future land uses depicted in the Burnsville 2040 Comprehensive Plan and identified in the Center Village Redevelopment Vision. The intent of the AUAR is to identify the worst-case potential impacts and the mitigation measures that may be taken to compensate for those impacts. Resource topics studied in the AUAR range from land use to cumulative potential effects. The AUAR must include a mitigation plan, which is based on the findings of potential impacts in the resources listed above, and is a commitment by the city to prevent potential impacts from occurring as a result from development on the site. I'll now review the high-level findings from the AUAR in the resources studied. The first one is land use. As mentioned previously, the development scenario is based upon the maximum development allowed under the comprehensive plan and is consistent with future land uses designated within this area. However, depending on the market, unforeseen inconsistencies with the comprehensive plan or the city's zoning may arise during future development proposals. Any zoning or land use inconsistencies will be addressed through a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, or the city's planned unit development or conditional use permit process. The rules in all of the city's environmental overlay district will also be adhered to in order to protect sensitive natural areas and wildlife habitats. Future construction is anticipated to include grading activities. If uncontrolled, sediments and pollution associated with erosion from construction activities can physically alter habitats. To mitigate this, future development would require a stormwater permit for construction activity from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency prior to initiating earthwork. Temporary erosion and sediment control measures will also be implemented during construction. Infrastructure will be built within the AUAR study area to convey stormwater to stormwater management areas to help achieve the appropriate water quality treatment. Stormwater will be conveyed by means of an underground storm sewer system, and maintenance and monitoring of the stormwater management areas will be performed to ensure long-term effectiveness of the facilities. Construction and future occupation activities would both generate construction-related waste materials such as wood, packaging, excess materials, and other wastes. Several permits and plans would be needed to ensure appropriate management of solid and hazardous waste as required by Minnesota statute. The AUAR study area has previously been developed and has a lack of natural and native wildlife habitat. Species currently using the AUAR study area have adapted to a highly disturbed urban environment, and minimal impacts are anticipated to those species. Although minimal wildlife habitat exists on the site, wildlife-friendly erosion control methods will be used where feasible within the study area to minimize impacts to wildlife using the site during construction. Temporary dust emissions during construction will be controlled as appropriate or as prevailing weather and soil conditions dictate. Construction contractors are responsible for dust control during construction of the proposed development and immediately address any dust problems as determined by the city. To the extent possible, construction activities will be conducted to minimize noise levels and nighttime construction activities. The area's transportation network is expected to support redevelopment within the AUAR study area with the following mitigation: improvements east of the I-35W bridge, improvements west of the southbound I-35W exit ramp intersection, I-35W southbound ramp modifications, County Road 42 pedestrian improvements, and ITS system modifications. We are currently in the middle of the public comment period on the draft AUAR and mitigation plan that ends on June 17th. Following that, the city will publish the final AUAR for council approval later in the month. You can view the full AUAR document on the city's website shown here and submit a comment form on the website or send your comments to Deb Garros by June 17th. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation of the Burnsville Center Village Area AUAR.